hearing in this documentary I mentioned earlier, just as you also said, of course, that the Hopi were kind of helped by this ant people, and that they were taken down in the caverns or caves.
Oh, exactly. Yes. The ant people. I found some petroglyphs that and which are on my website. Photographs of these petroglyphs, and they actually do look like ant people. They have antennas.
Yeah.
And these are very old petroglyphs. And I was mentioning the first and second world. The ant people helped out the Hopi, and as you say, they gave them aid during the destruction of both the first and the second worlds. The ant people took them down into the caverns, into their ant hills, so to speak, and protected them during this cataclysm that destroyed the world. The first world by fire, and the second world by ice, and the third world, when that was destroyed, the Hopis apparently were left on their own. The ant people didn't help them with the third world. It's said that the Hopi escaped the flood by floating on bamboo rafts to the fourth world. But these ant people are an interesting phenomenon to look at, to see in the rock art, for instance. It's just amazing to see the legends come alive in the stone that you're looking at.
Do you think that, because I recently interviewed Martin Dutré on this program, and I know that you referenced him in one of your articles, and of course, as we spoke, he talked about this kind of, more global civilization that have been part of the ancient world, I guess, that kind of this was a global civilization that was able to travel around the world and kind of set up all these different structures. And of course, this connects Egypt with South America, with North America, with Asia, because we find, pyramids in China and, of course, all over the place. And is this kind of the main thesis in your book too, or do you go into that at all?
Yeah, the second part of the book deals with the Hopi supposedly coming from the South Pacific. Some of the Hopi clans, especially the Water clan, called the Patki clan, supposedly they have legends of traveling across the Pacific and on bamboo rafts and stopping on stepping stones, or islands across the Pacific, and eventually coming to the mouth of the Colorado River and going up the Colorado River and coming out at the Grand Canyon onto the Colorado Plateau where the Hopi now live. So there's a lot of evidence that points to the Hopi as a kind of a mariner culture in the past. So these desert people out here, they once were seafarers, so they traveled across the ocean. And it's interesting to note that there are a lot of terms that crop up. I was talking about the ant people before. The Hopi word for ant is Anu, A-N-U, and the word for friend in Hopi is Naki.
Okay.
Anunnaki. Of course, Zechariah Sitchin would be very pleased to hear that. But
Indeed.
The ant friends helped the Hopi people. The Anunnaki helped the Hopi people in their journeys and helped them escape from these two cataclysms that overtook them. So
amazing. So there is correlation all over the globe, and of course the stuff in the Bible about the flood and things like this. I mean, it seems to be that there have been global cataclysms in the past, of course, and many different cultures have been experiencing them. And do you know if the Hopi kind of predicts this coming again this time then with new global cataclysm, so to speak?
Well, the time frame is not really set. It's said that the Hopi are the keepers of the land, and the Maya are the keepers of time. Mm. So the Maya are really more precise in their calendars and so forth. The Hopi are still performing rituals today on the reservation to keep the earth in balance, essentially. Mm. But the Hopi are kind of vague in their time frame. They said, well, it's very close. The end of the fourth world is very close. Mm. But they're not as specific as the Maya are in for instance, the 2012 date. Yeah. But talking about the global culture, just amazing. Orion is found all over the world. Yeah. For instance, the Hopi Egyptian connection I go into in my book. Mm-hmm. The Hopi have a kachina called the Sohu Kachina, and this kachina has 3 stars that are above the mask, kind of in a crest above the head, and this represents the belt of Orion. The Sohu Kachina is the word for star in Hopi. Oh. And if you go to the Egyptian language, you see the word Sahu, which is very close, and this is the word that represents the constellation Orion. So you have the Sohu Kachina that the Hopi talk about, and then the Sahu that represents Orion. So you have these connections come up all the time. Yeah. Between the two cultures. So I have no doubt that there's been a kind of a global seafaring culture that traveled and interacted much more than academics would have you believe.
Yeah, I remember a while back I published another article on my site. Can't remember the writer now, but he talked about the kind of the polarity or the differences or that kind of connects the Hopi with the people in Tibet. I don't know if you've heard about this, but the word, according to this writer at least, said that the Hopi word for love is the Tibetan word for hate, and that Tibetan word for love is the Hopi word for hate. So I mean,
there are a lot of similarities. The Tibetans have the color symbology for each direction, and the Hopi have basically the same color symbology for each direction. So I have no doubt that the Hopi interacted at one time or another in the old world, and then eventually made their way to the new world. And I think maybe Phoenicians or Egyptians traveled to this country and interacted as well.
Yeah, and I know that you wrote to get maybe into at least a bit in your article regarding the 33rd parallel. The connection to the Tower of Babel, either if we talk about it in the sense of that it is a myth, but it seems that there is a connection to that there were a global language, because as you say that there is connection between all these different words, and so do you think that there were at one time a single language on Earth?
I think if you go way back, I think there might have been. I also think that different cultures, picked up words phonetically from another culture and started to use these words. Yeah. And that's why you see so many similarities in the language. Of course, the language can be a kind of formidable thing. You can get lost in all the word similarities, and so sometimes it turns people off when you talk about that. But so I like to provide some archaeological evidence too.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
You know, the Orion correlations across the globe. There are so many of these. For instance, at Teotihuacan in Mexico, the pyramids are laid out like the belt of Orion.
Mm.
Another Orion correlation has been found by a colleague of mine, Jeff Nisbet. He found an Orion correlation in Scotland. And there are others that have been found in like Italy. I have another colleague, Rob Milne from South Africa, and he's working on Orion correlations down there. So it seems like the Orion mystery that Robert Bauval wrote about almost a decade ago is coming true, and there are more different types of variations of the correlation all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think that this is, is this the connection with astrotheology here? Is this simply, kind of like the worship of the stars in that sense, or do you think that this have connection with stuff like navigation and things like this?
Well, I think that the way that the way that the ancient ones perceived the universe is totally different from our secular way that we look at the sky now. We might think it's beautiful, or amazing, or just to gaze up at the sky. But when the ancient people were doing this was part of their cosmology, and the sky was alive, and the stars were deities, and there was a living a human universe that was living. It wasn't a dead universe, which the stars weren't just balls of gas exploding up there, but they were spirits, and they were gods. So there's a whole different point of view that you can sort of we can get an idea of the reverence that these ancient people must have had.
Yeah.
They were great sky watchers. The Hopi called them Taubo Mungwi, which is a sun watcher, but they were also star watchers as well. And they would, because it was a sedentary culture, they would be able to see where the sun rose on the horizon on a given day, and this would become part of their calendar for agricultural reasons, partly to keep track of where they were in the ceremonial calendar as well.
Yeah, exactly.
The summer solstice and winter solstice points were big times in their calendar. Of course, the summer solstice is where the sun rises in the most northern point on the horizon. And a sun watcher would look at the horizon and maybe pick out a butte or a mesa in the distance, and that would be the marker when the sun would rise. That would be a little memory kind of marker. Yeah. And where the sun would rise on the winter solstice, the farthest south. And, the sun goes north and south. According to the season where it rises and sets.
Oh, yeah.
And these were very important to the people. They weren't just just a pretty sunrise. It was their lifeblood, because it told them when to plant crops and so forth.
Yeah.
And they would become a part of this whole cycle with their rituals. They would do winter solstice rituals. Partly to help the sun come back from the south. They thought that perhaps that if they didn't do these rituals, the sun would keep going south and never come back.
Yeah.
So it was part of their life that they performed these rituals.
Yeah. And I
keep the world in balance, and